Hi, welcome back to the second plenary of this morning. There have been some changes in the schedule. In the next slot of simultaneous sessions, Ken Wilson's workshop, 10 Ways to Get Your Students to Do Something, will be held in Fortuna. And Davor Kabronzic's workshop, Reading Circles, will be held in Hall C, Camellia 1. In the 2:30 session, instead of Paul Gibson, calling all state school teachers, English in Action, Andy Paul will have his workshop, Online Support and Online Communities. And Paul Gibson's workshop will be held at the 5 o'clock session. These changes are on the notice board already, so if you need to, go and check there. Okay? Thank you.
It is my pleasure to have Mr. Lindsay Clenfield as our plenary speaker at this conference. He is a teacher trainer, and international author from Canada. He has won prestigious recognition for his writing, most notably for Global and Dealing with Difficulties, Delta Publishing with co-author Luc Pedramou, both of which earned him a visit to Buckingham Palace to receive an award from the Duke of Edinburgh. Lindsay has addressed teachers and given workshops in more than 20 countries. His work has appeared in numerous magazines and journals relating to ELT, and he has written a column on language teaching for the Guardian weekly newspaper. He was the founder of Pečekuća ELT.
Okay. Can you hear me on this one? No. Because I didn't turn it on. That better? Yes, that's better. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. How are you? A little bit tired after last night? No? Okay, good. Before I get started, I thought I would share with you, since my talk is about mobile technologies and mobile learning, I thought I'd share with you some of the text messages using my mobile phone that I've sent to my wife since I've been here. The first one was something like this: I've arrived in Opatija, it is raining. I usually do this so he doesn't think that it's a really nice, I don't say it's a very nice hotel, that I'm right in front of the Adriatic. It's raining, so okay. So I'm not having too good a time. A little bit later I send this message: everything is fine here, the dinner is nice, there's going to be a party. That was my first mistake. A little bit later, I got another text, so I sent another text back. I'm about to go to bed, but I talked to a teacher. She told me there is champagne. 2 mistakes here. 1, champagne, and 2, my wife, she. I'm still at the party. This was at 1:45. The DJ is playing Gypsy Kings. All the women are dancing. I'm sorry, Hupe, I will not be coming back to your conference next year. Okay, my talk is not just about that. My talk is called Upwardly Mobile. It's about M-learning in language education. And we'll be talking about what's going on around the world in this is sort of the new frontier for technology in education. It's what's getting a lot of attention. It will slowly be, I think, appearing more and more in your conference programs here, but you'll be hearing about it more and more just around you in general. To get started, though, I'm going to give you a little test. This is based on a vocabulary test that was done in the 1970s. I was told about this by a Canadian colleague of mine, Patsy Lightbound, who was a researcher, and she explained in a talk about this way in the 1970s in North America that they would measure a student's knowledge of a foreign language. Now, this was before we knew everything about corpus data. It was before even the lexical approach and what we understood about chunks and how language works together. So it was just measured on words. And what they did was that they would show the student cards with words. And the student would have to say yes or no. Yes means, I understand this word, I know what it means. And no means, I don't know this word. And at the end of the test, they would have a measurement of how many words the student knew. Now the problem with this is that they wanted to make sure that the student wasn't lying, because the student might say yes, 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 yes to everything, so that they could get a good score. So the researchers included fake words, invented words in the cards, so that if a student was saying yes all the time, then they were not a reliable subject for the test. So I've taken this model, and I'm giving you an M-Learning yes-no test. I'm going to flash words up on the board, and you have to tell a partner yes or no if you know them. Yeah? Yes means I know this word, I know what it means. No, I don't know what it means. Now, I know that you are all very honest, and that you would never lie about a word that you don't know and that you would say you know. But just in case, I've included some invented words in here. Okay? So you have to be careful, okay? Because some of these things don't exist. Others do. All right? Are you ready? Here's your first one. Tell a partner. You don't shout it out, you just tell a partner. I hope you said yes, because if you didn't, you were not listening. M-Learning is mobile learning. Okay, that was the test one. Ready? You ready to go? So this one, yes. Okay? Now tell a partner this one. Okay, let's go back through all of them then. So M-Learning is mobile learning. MMLPD, multimode learning package delivery. No, that doesn't exist. I just invented that one a couple of days ago. So it sounds something like really complicated and sort of, you know, a way that you should be delivering your classes or something, but no, that doesn't exist yet. Quad-core processor, this does exist. This is the little processor that's in the new phones. Before it was dual-core, and now it's quad-core, which means it's more power in the smaller device to do all the things like video and all the things that I'll be talking about a little bit later on in the talk. So that does exist. App, you all knew, I think. App is short for application. It's the little programs that go on mobile devices. CAP? No, I invented that one as well. That doesn't exist. CAP. Augmented reality. I heard yeses and nos here. It does exist, and I'll be talking about it a bit later, okay? It's technology that uses the camera of a phone and the internet to overlay information over the camera. So you look through the camera and you see something else. E-reader? Yes, you all were able to get that one. That was an easy one. Edu-imagery? It sounds like it should exist, doesn't it? It sounds like something, you know, that really should exist, because it sounds like a nice word, but it doesn't. You can imagine what it would mean. It's like use of images in education. But as far as I know, that word doesn't exist. I invented it. A tablet, you all know what tablets are. The famous iPad is one of the main ones. Netbook, I heard yeses and nos. Netbook does exist. It was, it's like a small laptop computer. So it doesn't have as much computer power as a laptop. It's a small one and can connect to the internet. iBooks Author does exist. It's a new program which allows, a new free program for Macintosh computers, which allows users to very easily create their own digital textbooks with embedded video, audio, and so on. This is one of the very new things, so I understand if you haven't heard this, is very, very new. Universitas, Wi-Fi, WAP, WAP, whatever, Wi-Fi, WAP, UWW does not exist. I invented that one as well. All the terms, though, that do exist are going to be referred to in this talk. Okay, so if you're still unsure about some of the things, I'll be talking about all of these in the talk and how they relate to education. See what this is? I actually wanted to bring this because this was my first mobile phone. I got my first mobile phone back in 1999. And I think I was a late adopter. As several people already had phones. When was your first mobile phone? What year? 2005, someone said. 2001. Anyone earlier than 2000? Yes, anyone earlier than 1999? 1998? 97? Oh, we have somebody in 97. You must have been carrying it almost in a briefcase. Earlier than that, even? Okay. I remember being very excited when I got my first mobile phone. I was living in Barcelona, I was teaching, and I was desperate. Try to remember that time when you had the first time that you had the phone, and I could I'm talking over here. And now I'm talking over here, and I was desperate for someone to call me. When, especially if I was at a family dinner with my brother-in-law who didn't have one yet, and I was so desperate that the phone would ring in my pocket, and that I could take it out. In terms of teaching, though, as a teacher, the only use this was for me was to get a phone call to say whether a class was canceled, or for me to phone whatever, if I had to call in somewhere, or say that I was going to be late or something. In class, I didn't really have any use for this. The screen was very small. It was a green, the letters were black and on a green background. I hardly even sent any text messages. I was a bit nervous about sending text messages. At the time, they were expensive. This was at the beginning when everything using the phone was kind of expensive. There was no pictures on the phone. The phone was only a phone. So I didn't really see any use for it in class. That's not entirely true. I did see one use for it in class was when we were doing, I was really happy that when we were doing the infamous phone language, you know, when you're teaching students how to talk on the phone. And if you remember, before the days of any mobile phones, when students reasonably could be expected to have a phone in their pocket, to pretend to do a phone call, there were a couple of things, but the favorite thing that I would see teachers do would be the students would sit back to back and they would do this, yes? To pretend they were talking. And so I was really happy that when we were doing those exercises, we could use my phone as a prop. But even then it was a bit silly because they would have to, they would pass it back to each other. So hello, and then give the phone and the other person would say hello, and so on, and back and forth. But that was really the only use I could see for that device in class. My new phone has a voice recorder. It has a camera, it has a video camera, it connects to the internet, it has a calculator, it has a note-taking thing. I can film the students, I can take photos, they can take photos, I can communicate over the internet if I've got wireless in my school, which I do now. All of these kinds of features in phones is what's making M-learning much more interesting to the world of education. What we're going to go over today is the handheld devices that are being talked about in the field of M-learning. Why is this a hot topic now? I'm going to introduce you to some of the apps that are coming out in terms of language learning. We'll look at some case studies, augmented reality and what I call far-out development, sort of the crazy things that are happening now in all this technology. We'll look at a pedagogy of M-learning. And we won't look at M-learning as a global course, we will look at M-learning some critical questions, although M-learning does feature in a course that I wrote. The handheld devices. One of the common things that people who talk about M-learning say is a myth is that M-learning is about mobile phones. It's not necessarily about just mobile phones, although mobile phones were what started off the whole idea of M-learning, and notably the iPhone, but now it could have been any of the other big smartphones especially. So that was the first. It's quickly, though, very, very quickly being superseded now by the idea of tablets in education. Across the world, I'll be talking about this later, but across the world in many different areas they are talking about introducing tablets as for students, that every student would have a tablet computer in the near, not so near future. So tablets, and of course the iPad being one, but there are many others now, the Samsung Galaxy Tab and so on. I've seen advertisements for all of these so far in Croatia as well. E-readers were talked about for a while as a possible thing for university students to keep their texts on there. Netbooks were being talked about for a while before the tablet came out as a potential thing for students to have at school. And I started noticing in classes that I was teaching that maybe 7 years ago, nobody had a computer in class. But now, I'd say maybe 10% or 15% of my students in adult classes that I teach come to class and bring out their netbook computer to take notes. Have any of you experienced the same thing? Students bringing a computer to class? Yes, some people are putting their hands up. Some, okay. I think this could be happening more and more. Again, it depends on your context. Why is this a hot topic now? Why am I talking to you, and why am I talking in conferences in different countries about M-learning? Well, there are several factors. Here is a chart of global mobile cellular subscriptions. Okay, so we can see from 2000 to 2010, this is per 100 inhabitants. So huge increase. So one of the reasons people are talking about it is because it's a reasonable assumption that almost 100% of your students will have this technology, almost, or soon. For example, in Britain, a little while ago, they surpassed the 100% of people who have a mobile connection. And it's in fact 120%, which means for every 100 people, there are 120 mobile connections, because some people have a phone for work, and some people have a phone for home, and so on and so forth. So that's one reason. We also see that this is, again, per 100 inhabitants, we can see where it's across the world. Africa is obviously lower down, but everywhere is sort of on the increase. Yeah, and I think these numbers are already probably out of date. It's 2 years ago now, so it's increasing everywhere. The other reason why I'm talking about it now is related to the cost. The cost and also the target market. If we look at this ad, again from 2010, it's for a back-to-school netbook. A Dell back-to-school netbook. But if we notice the ad, Dell have teamed up with Nickelodeon, children's cartoon channel. Is there Nickelodeon here? Yeah. So an international children's television thing. So they are very much aiming towards younger and younger demographic, a market of students, and that's where these big companies want to be. They want the students to have them. I live in Spain. And in the big supermarket catalogs, you know, where you, like the Carrefour catalog that comes in the mail, in September, when it's back to school time, that catalog used to have things like school bags and packs of pens and things like that, so you would look to see that. Now that catalog has all of that, but they also have cheap netbook computers. I've just been told by my sons are in public school, and I've just been told that within 2 years, he's 11 now, so when he starts high school, he should really have a laptop computer. It's not obligatory, but they're now saying he really should have his own laptop computer. So, second reason is that the price is coming down, and the companies are looking very much towards education as their big market area. Third reason is what is called the 21st century button. The 20th century button was a button on a mouse and, or a keyboard, and that's how you interacted with the machine. You would interact with the machine, with the computer, via a button, a click, or on a mouse usually, or a keyboard. What is the 21st century button? Yes, it's touch screens. So this makes it more interesting also for education, because touch screens can make the buttons bigger or smaller on the screen, which is better for little fingers or for clumsy big fingers. One of the problems was, until the touch screen, and the only device that has kind of survived with the keyboard that people still really like is the BlackBerry, but otherwise the small keyboard made it hard to sort of do work in a classroom, for example, or whatever, easily. Also, touch screens are becoming very big now in the whole area of interactive whiteboards, which then make it very attractive for children to participate and sort of touch on the screen. You can see also that this is a 21st century button, and that we're in that kind of switchover process at bank machines. Have you ever been to an automatic bank machine and you're never sure if it's the button that you have to press or the screen that you have to press? That sometimes is a bit confusing. If you put a child in front of one of those, they tend to now just go and press the screen. So that's already becoming a reality for many young people. What they say is the next button after the touch screen is this. Do any of you recognize what this is? Yeah, this is from a game console that came out last year called the Kinect. If you haven't heard of the Kinect, it attaches to the Xbox. And probably you've heard of the Xbox if you've got children over 8 years old. They probably want one. It's there, and it's recording the motion of the person in front. So it's motion detection that then relates to the screen. This is what they're saying will be the next evolution after touchscreen, is that through proximity, you just do a gesture, and that will activate the machine. The last reason why mobile learning is a hot topic is for convergence. Convergence, to explain to you what I mean by convergence, in the past I had a camera, I had my phone, I had my computer, I had a calculator in the house. We had, as a family that we shared with my parents, we had a video camera recorder. Now, all of those devices seem sort of superfluous. In my phone, I have all of them, so everything has converged into one device. So this means that to students, you can sell the one device with all of those things: the calculator, the compass, the camera, the phone. All of those things go into one, so they become multi-purpose devices. To illustrate this for teachers, I've got a video to show you, which I call Convergence for Teachers. It's a device which doesn't exist, but it's a concept for a phone that is being worked on. And all the technology that you will see in the video does exist, but the phone hasn't come out or been completely developed yet. So I'm going to show you that. It's an illustration of convergence for teachers. Okay, how many, let's have the lights back on again. How many of you would like one of those? Well, if you buy my book, Macmillan has a big box full of them, and I'll just give you. No, that's not true. That's not true. It doesn't exist yet, but all the technology that they mention in there, the little projectors, the touch, like you can make any surface a touchscreen for your keypad, all of that does exist. So it's indicating that this could be what the next generation of phones could do. But for me, as a teacher, that's convergence for a teacher. And who knows, maybe in 10, 15 years, you'll be talking to a new colleague who's just arrived at the school, and you'll say, I remember when we had a big box that we had to project things through, and we had to connect the computer to this box with that was hanging from the ceiling, and the teacher will say, no way, that's so old. But maybe that's what's going to happen. Right, so that's convergence. Wanted to tell you a little bit about, lots of times when people talk about M-learning, they are going to be talking about apps, okay? Because that tends to be what people think of as M-learning. And of course there are, I think the Apple Store just passed its 25th billion download. There are hundreds of thousands, millions of apps out there. What is happening now for ELT apps in English language teaching? Well, the first thing that became an app, which I thought was great and very useful for students, was the dictionary. Okay? Dictionaries are heavy. They're big. They're, if you imagine having to carry around a dictionary with you all the time, that's quite a chore. So sometimes you'd have the class, you'd have the dictionaries in the corner of the class, we'd have one dictionary where students, could go and refer to a dictionary. I still like having a paper dictionary on my shelf, but I think as a student, having a dictionary in a phone, where also I can press the word and hear what it sounds like, is a very useful thing. So all of the publishers, here's an example, Macmillan Dictionary, but also Oxford Dictionaries, the Longman Dictionaries, all of them have now become available as apps for any kind of mobile device. That was the first one, and I think it made a lot of sense. British Council, they started very early on, one of the first ones to develop apps and putting things into app format, specifically for language teaching. Lots of the early apps they did now look a bit old-fashioned, but I think they're making new versions of them. Here was an example of the British Council show Flatmates, I think it's called, which was like a little series of videos that people could download and watch. Obviously, apps lend themselves very well to doing sort of little mini exercises, particularly grammar exercises. So one of the publishers, lots of the publishers now are coming out with grammar apps. Cambridge came out with one. This is one that I just saw on the stand yesterday. Pearson has got their own grammar app as well. The New York Times and the New York Times was the only newspaper that I saw that made an easy English version application for phones. So you could get an easier news in English from the New York Times. So that was another one. Readers, Macmillan and Oxford readers have all become are all becoming on apps, so you can read the graded readers there. And finally, pronunciation as well. This is the symbol for the Sounds app, which is another app from Macmillan, which gives you the phonetic alphabet. You can press and hear the sound on the phonetic chart. There are sort of little tests and games and so on and so forth. I think this is a fantastic app. There's a free version and a paid version. But now I get my students, just as part of the beginning, if they have a phone, I say, well, get the Sounds app because we can work with that later. So apps were one thing. I had a blog called Six Things. It's still online, sixthings.net, where I would make lists of things. And one of the lists that I made that was very popular with teachers was a list of apps that teachers would really like to see. So this is the little comic relief part of the talk. And I asked teachers what apps they would really like to see. And I got several very funny answers. Here was the first one. As a teacher in Britain, wanted an app that they had named I'm Sick. And with I'm Sick, it would modulate your voice on the phone so that when you called in work to say that you couldn't come in after your weekend at Upe, you would sound very sick. And so that was one joking one. iExtra, this was a great idea from the teacher in Spain. She said, I'm sick and tired of having to do pair work activities, and every time there's a pair work activity, I have like 13 students in the class, or 17. So iExtra would be the extra student. So I say, you two work together, you two work together, you two work together. Ken, you work with this. And this would be the extra student for that activity. So iExtra was another one. iName, sometimes I wish I had iName. iName would be, you would use the camera on your phone and you would discreetly show it to the class, and you could look and it would have all their names flashing up. So you would not have to remember their names. It would just point, it would recognize their faces, and it would tell you what the names are. Wouldn't that be a great app? iRock was from a colleague of mine in Romania. He wanted an app that would make a loud laughter and clapping noise during class. And then when he came out of class, his colleagues would say, what was happening in your class? And he would say, I rock. And iFind was another teacher in Britain. She wanted an app to help her find things in her handbag. So she would just say to it, the keys to the staff room. And it would say, okay, I think they're down here, And then it would clap when she got them and said, you found them, very good. So, okay, that was teachers having fun guessing up dream apps. These don't exist either, by the way. So, I say that and you're smiling, but I did have one talk where someone came up and had written them all down and said, where can I find? They don't exist. They don't exist. Okay, and learning and practice. When I've given this talk in many different parts of the world, sometimes people, or when I've been talking about this, my interest in this, people say, yeah, Lindsay, that's probably fine because that's probably what's happening in America or in England or in rich schools or in private universities or only for rich kids. It's not possible because it's too much money, or it's not possible in my context. But if you look at what is happening around the world, you'll see that M-learning is happening in quite unusual places. Obviously, in the States, there's a lot of this going on. Here's an example of Long Island University campus offering iPads at half price to their students, and then trying to get more material onto the iPads and having those being used instead of collections of textbooks. So yes, it is happening a lot in the States. But this is a project from Bangladesh called Mali, which is mobile and immersive learning for literacy in emerging economies. And they have collections of very cheaply priced mobile phones with literacy exercises on them. And they have these kind of travel into the villages, and the children are learning to read and write, or it's extra supplementary stuff for reading and writing, especially in areas where there is no school or there's very limited access to schooling. MOBI is a project in South Africa which covers the maths curriculum from grades 10 to 12, and all of the resources are accessed on a mobile handset, so they're like extra math support exercises, and it's tied to the national curriculum. Also here, projects happening across Latin America, this one is something called TeacherMate. And the TeacherMate, you see a child is holding a TeacherMate there. It looks like a little Nintendo DS. You know, Nintendo DS, right? The little handheld console. It looks like that, but it's with really strong plastic. So if they drop, they're not going to break, and so on. And they have little exercises which the teacher can customize from their computer to tie in to the curriculum. And then the students get these at the end of a class, sort of as their practice or their game. They do these, they take them home to do homework. These aren't available to the public yet. They're being used in pilot projects because they only cost $50. So again, we're looking at the price of these things coming down and being experimented with in various projects, but not just in rich environments or rich countries or rich contexts, in all kinds of contexts. I looked for examples of M-learning in Croatia. I did find several hits on websites, but I couldn't find a nice website spot. I couldn't find exactly something concrete happening here. But let me just ask the audience, just a show of hands, have you heard of anything happening here in terms of tablets being offered in schools, or students using these things? Anyone heard? No, not yet? Okay, so but I think you're going to start seeing it more and more. I mean, if it's not happening, you will start seeing this happen. We'll talk again about that later. Augmented reality, this is what I call as part of the far-out developments. Remember that I explained briefly, augmented reality works, you need a phone with an internet connection possibility and a camera, and then you can have an app. And then you download an app or whatever the thing is for augmented reality, and it will give you other information across so when you look through the screen, you see something else. So that little joke app, iName, for example, if that existed, that would be using augmented reality. It would be recognizing your faces, and it would be showing you the names. But that technology does exist in terms of recognizing things and showing information. The first time I saw an augmented reality app was in Barcelona in the town square. A friend of mine said, look what I just got from my phone. And he pressed on it, and he showed me it, and he pressed bars. And all of a sudden, we saw sort of like maps appearing for where the nearest bars are. And then he pressed rooms for rent. And it changed again, and there was indication, like in this building there's a room for rent at this per month, and there's another one 300 meters down that way, and so on. So it's very interesting. For language learning, I found there is an app that exists that does use augmented reality, and it's actually really incredible. I'm going to show it to you now. This does exist. So this is not like the other things I've been talking about. This actually does exist, but it's even hard to believe it does. Can we have the lights again? So that's an example of augmented reality, and it does exist. When I was giving this talk at a conference in Switzerland, some people downloaded it to their phones during the talk. The free version of WordLens just swaps the letters around. So it's sort of proving to you I can manipulate the letters. So if you showed it to happy birthday, it would spell them backwards. And then the paid version will translate. Now obviously, this is the same problem of any machine translation we saw on the advertisement. It's sort of a literal word-for-word translation. But how useful is that for students, and interesting for students, especially traveling and so forth? I'd love to see a thing like that for Chinese characters, for example, Chinese to English, so I could understand what some of the Chinese shops in Spain. So that's an example of augmented reality. So far we've talked about the technology and why this is a hot topic now. Wanted to start addressing the pedagogy of M-learning. Sometimes the critics say, is there a pedagogy really emerging from this, or are we just doing these things because we can? Nikki Hockley has started outlining, and several others have started outlining pedagogical decisions that you would make if you were putting M-learning into a curriculum. Here were some of them. The first would be as a choice on whether or not you implement this in the classroom or on the move. Okay, in the classroom obviously means the students connect their devices or whatever and do work in class, you work within a class, or on the move means that they would do it outside of the classroom as part of homework, extra support for language study. In the classroom, of course, in some of your contexts might not be possible because maybe you work in a school where mobile phones are banned in the classroom. We're going to come back to that in a moment. If you are doing it in the classroom, the debate becomes, is it class sets or do students use their own devices? Each side may have its own advantages or disadvantages. What's curious, though, about class sets is you sort of, if I said to you, well, could you imagine your school having a class set of tablet computers that you would use? You'd probably laugh at me and say there's no way, that's too expensive and so on. But curiously enough, schools are finding that actually the class set of tablet computers is cheaper than having the computer room. How many of your schools have a computer room? Yeah. That could be something of the past eventually, because that room could be used for another classroom or so on and so forth, which is what happened in the school where I was teaching. They decided to take back that room to have more classes, and then they had a big furniture kind of thing, a big trolley, and they bought laptop netbook computers. They bought 15 of them, and then we would sign out the trolley for what we call the mobile computer room. So if I wanted to do computer activities, I would sign up and then take the trolley into class. This reminded me of the kind of things I was doing 10 years ago when the school would have one television. Do you remember that? And you had to sign for the television and then pull, well, I certainly remember having to sign up for the television and then pull the trolley into class. That could be what will be happening now. And the school said this is actually cheaper for us than having the computer room. That should be rich content and discrete content. Discrete content would be individual little exercises. For example, the grammar apps that I was talking about are discrete content. They're sort of fill the gaps, drag and drop, things like that. The MOBI, the South African math curriculum, that's discrete content. Discrete content is easy to make, it's easy to mark, and so on. But the thing is, students now expect more and more rich content. That means sound, video, animations, and so on and so forth. So while it is possible to probably do some kind of mobile learning yourselves by designing some of the content, it becomes difficult to make the rich content. Which is why I think publishers are and should be moving into that area of developing content for this. Push content or pull content. Push content means that you, the teacher, tell them what to do. So for homework, I want you to download this. I want you to do these exercises on it. I want you to watch this video. I want you to do this, and so on. So you tell them what to do with their mobile devices, be it tablets, laptops, whatever. You say, I want you to do these things. You push the content towards them. Pull content means you design a task which they pull the content themselves. So you say, we're going to do, let's say, something on festivals next week. I want you to find out about the festivals in 6 different countries using your mobile devices and then be able to present it in small groups to 3 or 4 people. Examples could be find videos, find a little slideshow, find photos, interview people and record that onto your device. Then the students pull the content themselves and you work with that. So just 2 different ways of designing a task. If we're doing learning on the move, and this is what I've done more. I will confess that in my teaching, I do some teaching in Spain to adult teachers, but not English teachers. I teach like the maths, history, science teachers, English. I haven't done it in classroom applications, but I know other teachers who have. What I have done is I've got them to do more learning on the move. This could mean as simple as encouraging use of apps. I tell my students, if you have a smartphone, please get the sound apps, and you can check with that, dictionaries, all kinds of apps, or I get them to suggest things to each other that could help with their English. I like to use audio clips and video clips, and I was lucky enough that in the course that I wrote, my publisher, Macmillan, said we could put in a lot of audio and video downloadable. So I like to encourage them to download video and audio and work with that. And use other push content. So So that would be one way of doing learning on the move. So I usually push the content at them, and sometimes I've done one of those exercises where everybody has to bring something to class. This was an example of videos and listening on a course that I wrote called Global, where there were downloadable video and audio. And I think that we're going to see this. I think it's already happening in several of the other courses as well, not just mine, that this will become an increasing feature of your materials. A colleague of mine had an amazing idea. He was learning Spanish in the Czech Republic. He was, loved everything Spanish. And he said he started forcing Spanish on himself using his mobile devices. So made me think you could get students to force English on themselves using their mobile devices. For example, take your phone. So you tell the students, take your phone this week and change the language settings to English. And leave it on English for a week. And then we'll talk about any new words that came up or that you saw or whatever. Change your Google homepage to English. Change your browser homepage to English. If you have a GPS in the car, you can change the language to English. I wouldn't recommend that for zero beginners, but it's an interesting way. So he was, and he said it wasn't a lot of extra language. Let's not kid ourselves. It's not it doesn't compensate for reading a whole book or talking with somebody every day. But it was just another little way that he said he was forcing the foreign language on himself. Those who are introducing M-learning into their classes are doing things like instant web searches. So you start off, you've got your text in the book, and you say, I want you to find out 3 things about this. Go. Now, of course, this works if you have free Wi-Fi. If they have to pay money to connect to the internet to do that, as a student, I wouldn't want to be doing that necessarily in class. But more and more schools now have free Wi-Fi. Allowing research time in class. Doing things like instant polls or votes. There are programs, there's one called Poll Everywhere, where you can set up a poll and the students can vote via their mobile phone that connects to the internet, and you can see the results appear on the screen if you've got a whiteboard. One thing that a teacher in Romania told me she does, she said it's really simple. She does dictations at the end of every class, but they do the dictation on their phone. And she said, and they are so enthused, so they open up like an SMS as if they're going to send a text. They don't send the text, they just do the dictation there, and then they check with a partner. She said, I've never seen them so excited about doing a dictation. So she will dictate 10 words or phrases, and they just put it in the phone. This is for teenagers. The next generation of textbooks, I think we're slowly moving towards a situation where the next generation of textbooks could be some things on tablets. The advantage of putting materials into this format is that they can have film embedded, audio embedded, they can, you can have a dictionary embedded with it, but also what I would be interested in is that they could be updated. Just like you update anything on like if you get an update for a program, imagine a book that could update itself every year with some new content and so on. That to me sounds really interesting. An iBooks Author, I mentioned at the beginning, is a program that's just come out which allows the user in a very simple way, just like Microsoft Word, to make digital textbooks with embedded video, photos, audio, and so on and so forth, PowerPoint presentations, etc. And I think that we're moving more and more towards this. We're not there yet, and of course the disadvantage is everyone has to have a tablet. If you break the tablet, you've lost all the books as well. But this is definitely what's happening. I'm going to finish my plenary this morning with some critical questions, though. You would be forgiven for thinking that I love mobile learning and I think everyone should do it and so on. That's partly true. I do love the ideas. I'm very interested in it. But I also think that we owe it to ourselves to think critically before we embrace a new way of doing things in class. And there are questions that have come up that are very hotly debated. The first question is this: are we wrong to ban phones in class? How many of you work in classes where the phones are banned? They have to turn them off. Yeah. This is the same everywhere. Most people say that the phones are banned in class. So at the best, you could suggest that they do these things outside of class. The people in favor of M-learning, the M-learning sort of priests, if you like, say that this is a very short-sighted thing that education institutions are doing. They're saying we're depriving our students of a huge opportunity, and we should be training them how to use these devices to help them learn better. Okay, so that's one debate. I'll tell you where I feel about this in a moment, because it's connected to the next question. The poorest classroom is the classroom that allows everything in and everything out. So just like something that allows water in, that water will just flow through it. And that's information and the internet. Now the problem with classroom, if you allow tablets, internet connection, phones, and everything to be used, is how the teacher can control this. And already it's hard enough to control a class of 30 or 25 students, especially teenagers. But if now you're competing with Facebook, with emails, with Angry Birds, with whatever else it is that they're doing on those things, I personally think that's almost impossible. Granted, you could say, well, you have to be more interesting than those things. But I think it's going to be pretty hard. So my feeling on whether or not it's good to ban phones in class, perhaps we need a middle way, where the phones are not allowed in class except for specific times. The next question is, do we really want anytime, anywhere learning? This is what's often talked about as the advantage of M-learning. Students can learn anytime, anywhere. They are not just bound to the classroom. They can learn on the bus. They can learn in a queue somewhere. They can learn in the doctor's office while they're waiting. They can learn on the couch. Anytime, anywhere learning is great until it becomes anytime, anywhere teaching. And that's also the danger that is beginning to happen if increasingly you have blended options in your schools, you have online extra things. What happens when the teacher is expected to give support? Let me give you an example. I teach some online courses, and we give the assignment on the Monday and it's due the next Monday. When do you think the students do the assignment? Sunday. Our institution that I worked for also had a policy that there would be a 12-hour response time from the tutor on any question. So the student doesn't even open the homework or the assignment until Saturday night. They send me the email Sunday morning. I didn't check my emails on Sunday, and then on Monday, some of them complained. They said, well, I sent my question in, and 24 hours had gone by and the tutor hadn't answered. And so we eventually had to sort of organize the 12-hour rule, because otherwise, especially if I have email coming on my phone, I become the anytime, anywhere teacher. And that is a danger that I think as teachers we have to be very careful of. So my feeling is anytime, anywhere learning, great. Anytime, anywhere teaching, pay me extra. Where is the pedagogy? This is what some people are saying. Are we doing this just because we can? Are we doing this because it's worthwhile, or is it not worthwhile? For example, when I did the poll, remember I told you could do a poll and they would vote by phones? I did one of those, and it took me like an hour to set it up. It took me a long time to explain it, and I asked something like, did you see a film at the weekend? Whereas really, there were only 12 students in the class, so I could have just asked them to put their hands up, and I would have seen the answer, but I wanted to see it on the screen. Last question, and then we'll finish, is whose interests does M-learning really serve? And this, I think, is the major critical question. I think that M-learning is great for learners, and I think it's got potential for teachers. I don't deny that. But I also know that an M-learning put into a curriculum, into a government project, when a government says all students in 5 years will have a tablet computer, I know that that's amazing news for Apple, for Samsung, for Vodafone, for all of those companies. And that's why it's no surprise that they're very, very interested in you and us and what we're doing. And they're very interested in seeing a pedagogy develop for this, because this is guaranteed customers. If a teacher says you all need this, if a school says every student must have that, those are sales that are guaranteed and also could build brand support, so that when you finish school and you like the thing, you just buy the next one, and so on and so forth. So while I do think it is useful, I think we should go into these kinds of things with our eyes open. If you're interested in any more of this in more detail, I wrote a little ebook about it, which is available at that site, macmillanglobal.com, that covers in more detail how you can implement things in a very sort of simple way, like the dictations on the phones, like simple activities. There's a free ebook there, and also it's all available online. I'd like to finish by saying thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day.